no prizes for guessing where we are here at what some people call the home of football, the new home of football, the Arsenal Stadium. Joined today on HaytersTV, I'm Nick Keller, by the great Tom Canton. I think some of you might have seen him on before. The Football London Arsenal reporter, Daily Mirror, the Gooner Talk, Seeing Red. I mean, people are beginning I used to get called Mr. Arsenal sometimes, but Tom is very much coming into the frame, if not already taking over as the main man here. We're here to talk just here on the about Arsenal and the January transfer window. I mean, this time in the summer, Arsenal went on the unprecedented spending spree, signing 8 quite significant players, Tom. I mean, we'll talk about what we think may or may not happen in January. It's not going to be the same as the summer. That would be completely unrealistic, even financially, for let alone many, many reasons. But how do you think that summer window has sort of panned out in terms of hits and misses and where it's left Arsenal? Here we are, sort of halfway through the season.
Well, at the top of the table, and unbeaten in the Champions League, won every single game, and of course we're looking, I think, at 8 signings that have deepened a squad and made them more viable to compete across multiple competitions. Yes, there's been a few dips this season, I think, and been some results that we would have hoped would have been better. But at the same time, Arsenal have been to, I think, 8 of the top 10 teams, 7 of the top 10 teams away from home this season already. So they've ticked off some pretty tough places as well, and they've maintained that gap. So we're hoping that the signings that Arsenal have made will be the reason, if we're talking in May about a Premier League title, that they will be the primary reason why Arsenal were able to take that next step from where they went last season to where they'll go this season. And I think for some players there's been some successes immediately. Zubimendi, I think, is probably the big one. I'd say probably the biggest success of all the signings. And then you've got players that are lesser known that have surprised, like Mosquera, I think, has been a really good sign. I think Kepa's done well in the League Cup as well, and the opportunities that he's had to play. And Capier's had to kind of bed in weight for his moment, but has stepped up when needed. But the big questions have been the other big 2, which have been Gyökeres and Eza. And I think both of them have had moments, but we're still kind of waiting to see if they're going to fulfil the dream potential that many fans thought they would. Yeah,
I mean, Victor Gyökeres is getting a lot of the headlines and a lot of the heat in the debate because he hasn't scored sort of a goal at every game, and he's not Erling Haaland. I mean, for me, Arsenal needed that number 9. That's sort of, I think most people agreed on the veracity of that debate. But he does offer something to the team that they haven't had before. He does sort of attract defenders to him. It makes Arsenal play a different, sometimes more direct way. And he's not scored, has he? I mean, personally, I go back, you think Dennis Bergkamp took a while to settle. Thierry Henry, he's a completely different player to them. Robert Pires, sometimes it was a season before I started seeing them play really well. And I'm not saying Victor Gyökeres is going to be as good as those guys, but I would advise, well, I wouldn't advise anybody, but as personally, I think stay calm on Victor, and I think he will get better.
Yeah, I think that there is absolutely a reason to show patience with a player. I think you can absolutely voice concerns and worries and criticisms when they're viable and they come in at the right time, and because he's a great finisher. And the question here is Arsenal getting him into enough positions to finish opportunities? He's had opportunities to score which he hasn't taken in certain games. I think back to the Fulham game, I think back to the Newcastle game. But I think since that, he was kind of building up a head of steam before the injury at Burnley. Had a great half against Burnley away from home. Scored, was really involved in the Declan Rice goal as well. And from that moment, I think people thought he was going to kick on. But he gets that injury and it kind of interrupts that momentum that he had building up. But I think, he needs time. He needs the season to be able to fully judge him. I don't think he gets a free hit of a season. He's been signed in a campaign where the expectation is Arsenal have to win the league this season. So it's not a case of give him a season to bed in, because that's not what he's been signed for. He's been signed to have an immediate impact, like signings are when you are at that level. And so we can only judge whether he's had that impact in May. It's too soon now.
And look at Sesko Isak, who's now got a broken leg and so on, but not all of these big money strikers hit the ground running. I mean, Madueke for me has been a revelation. I always thought he was a good player, but he's even better now. I've seen him up close and on a regular basis. Do you think the squad is strong enough coming into January? And you've seen so many injuries. I mean, this is why they signed with players. So many injuries, but not just in volume, but to key players, all the attackers, all the defenders. I mean, we're on the verge now. We're looking at the January market. It's open. Do you think Arsenal need to get stronger, need more depth?
Well, you sign 8 players in the summer and you're thinking, do I need to sign more players? And I know that there's, I call it shiny new toy syndrome sometimes, and the fan base can be like, oh, it's a transfer window, you have to sign somebody. But at the end of the transfer window of the summer, I felt, no, I don't think Arsenal need to sign any more. In fact, before we signed Nkapia, I was feeling pretty comfortable with the window. Thank goodness we did make that signing, although Kivior probably wouldn't have left had we have not signed Nkapia. But I do think that if there is any movement in January, it'll be very much predicated on if there's a surprise exit, which I don't think we're expecting. And then you've got to look at maybe some of the players that have got and had less minutes. Ethan Nwaneri is, I think, the biggest of any maybe player you look at and go, could there be maybe a movement? Maybe. A lot of clubs, as far as where I'm monitoring, they know, of course, he wants minutes. He nearly left in the summer. Arsenal convinced him to sign a new contract and were successful at doing that and convinced him that this is the right place for him to be. But that hasn't necessarily been followed up with enough minutes to necessarily, I think, justify to him that decision was correct at this stage. And we've still got to see more from him. And I think he deserves more minutes maybe than he's getting. The reason I think he's not playing as much is the defensive side to his game, at least, I think still needs development. I think when he plays, Arsenal can be a little bit exposed, and we know that Arteta loves a player that is putting in 100% in both directions, offensively and defensively. So from that point of view, Ethan's got so much talent. He's still 19 years of age as well, but he may be looking at things and thinking, I probably should be playing more minutes at this moment in time.
Yeah. Are you looking to leave? Are you talking about a transfer or a loan? Or
I think that the fact that he signed that contract in the summer means that a permanent exit looks unlikely, unless Arsenal received a huge amount of money. But the reality is they want him to stay. They believe in him, they believe in his talent, they think there is a pathway for him, and that's why they got him to sign that new deal. But I think that a loan move, from a personal point of view, I wouldn't loan him in January, because I think you look at the injuries that Arsenal suffered, I don't think they can afford really to let anyone go. But in the summer, after a season, assessing whether he's, broken 1,000 minutes, 1,500 minutes over the course of a season, is that enough for a player at his age where you really need to be playing games? I'm not sure. And so he might look at that and think maybe a move to Germany or a move to Spain or a move into Europe and get a season abroad, playing week in, week out. There's always that risk that when you do that, you get a taste for it and think, well, I deserve to be playing at this level week in, week out, so he might look to move. I think obviously he loves Arsenal, he wants to succeed at Arsenal, but he's savvy enough to recognise that he does need to be playing. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised if he left permanently, but a loan I don't think is off the cards entirely.
And they've had talking about the strikers again. I think we're in the press conference room here where Mikel Arteta usually sits in your seat or my seat or,
yes.
or one of the, I think in Tom's seat, of course. It was talking about their strikers and Victor Gyökeres and things, and Mikel was saying when he was signing Victor in particular, one of his anxieties was, I'm going to have so many forwards now. What am I going to do with Kai? What am I going to do with Gabby Jesus? It's like, Miko Marino can play up there. But I've never had once say to them, look, I'm sorry you're not playing today, because there's always been someone bloody injured. Gabriel Jesus is back now. He's in the squad. He's fit again. Touch wood.
Yes.
It looked like going into the last summer window that Arsenal would probably look to sell him a huge wage on the bill.
Yeah.
A player who's much loved in Brazil and abroad, probably all around the world. Do you think he's now a player that they would listen to offers for again this window, or does he have to stay?
I think, you look at the striker situation. Arteta's been using Miko Marino in a lot of games in that role because of the injuries they suffered. Gyökeres has had an injury. Havertz has been out for the majority of this season, only just making his way back into the team. You look at Gabriel Jesus, most of the season he's missed. Can they really afford to think about letting one go? I don't think Arteta would have any idea of that. I think Simon Collins of previously The Standard, now The Sun, was talking about it in that press conference. I asked Arteta about it, and he basically said, no, I'm not thinking about letting Jesus go. The summer may be a different story. If Arsenal get a significant offer for him, it could tempt them, especially considering I think his contract runs out in 27, so only have a year left on his contract after this season. But I think that he's spoken in the media recently that he's happy at Arsenal. He wants to succeed at Arsenal. He wants to achieve something at Arsenal. He thinks these are going to be the best years of his career. And from what we saw at the start of his time at Arsenal, which was a brilliant start to life at the club, if we were expecting, and he's expecting the best years of his career, that's an exciting thing, and he should be allowed to do that. So I think it will depend very much upon what the offers are, if there are offers, which has sometimes been the issue with Arsenal and selling players, as the offers haven't been too forthcoming with some of the players that they are willing to let go. But I don't think I think they need that depth at centre forward, and they've lacked that depth at centre forward for so long.
Yeah, only 28.
Yeah.
And you know, injuries aside, he should be sort of coming into his peak and prime now and looking at the best years of his career. Maybe that's what he thinks, and he clearly hopes that happens at Arsenal, as you've been pointing out. I'm going to wind this up. Just one player who has been a bit linked with Arsenal is Semenyo at Bournemouth. One hell of a player. You can see him in a sort of an Arsenal shirt, and his agent has said that lots of club interested. He's intimated that Arsenal might be one of them. I think you, like me, are hearing that's probably not the case, not this window.
Sure.
What would you sort of say to Arsenal fans who are thinking, like you said, the shiny new toy syndrome?
Yes.
Let's get Semenyo for Christmas, you know?
Well, I think that Semenyo would certainly be open to the idea of a move to Arsenal, who wouldn't really at this point in time. The reality for Arsenal is that financial fair play regulations, UEFA FFP, Premier League profit and sustainability regulations were quite tight already in the summer. Even before they signed Eza, there was a consciousness about those regulations. They then spent that £60+ million on Eza, and so for that reason, the idea of spending another 65 million in January before that PSR cycle renews in the summer, I can't see Arsenal having the freedom to do that unless someone leaves. And also, Trossard, Martinelli, Madueke, Saka, Dowman, of course, when he returns, getting minutes. They've got a lot of options. Eza can play in a wide position. Do they really need to add Semenyo to that? I think it would require Arsenal to go and see somebody leave for then a Semenyo type to come in, and that's not going to happen in January.
No, I would agree with that, Tom. And really, the only thing that could really have a huge impact, from what I'm aware of, if there was another spate of injuries to
of course.
They really serious
maybe respond to that.
Yeah, that's the only thing. You're going to be busy during the window. What are you going to be doing on your multiple platforms from during January?
Yeah, well, of course, the 8 a.m. show on TGT every day usually, but we'll have coverage, of course, at Football.London and in the Mirror, across the window. Not that there's a promise that loads of stuff will be going on transfer-wise Arsenal, but if anything does go down, we'll be across it.
And then Tom's around. Tom, you're a legend. Thanks very much.